Hi, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another session on our distance learning, common sense distance learning. Today, we have the honor of and the pleasure of connecting with Nick Zelfeldt. I always get your name wrong. I'm terribly sorry. He is the Instructional Tech Coordinator at Contra Costa County of Ed. Today, we're going to be talking about the distance learning and the way county offices both internally are handling it, and some basic tips and 3 tips you might be able to take at a county level. So, Nick, I want to start with you. You are such an amazing human being. So we'll start with something that you really enjoyed today for working at the county office. What is something that you really get excited about working in your role? And if you can share a little bit about things that you do within your role, but something you get excited about.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Likewise, on the amazing human being thing, always love to connect. To be honest, I've had the opportunity over the last couple of days to see people do the thing that we hope all educators will do, and that's be willing to work themselves to the bone in the name of serving those who can benefit from their support. I think we all have pride in being in the field of education, but when something like this happens, I've just seen the education community come together, being willing to fail and fail gracefully and fail transparently at times, but all in the name of serving those who need support in like a really challenging time. And for me personally, I get to see it every day in my work with every district that I get to work with and support, and it is just completely, I'm constantly humbled, and it's always inspiring to try to do more right now. And I'm just so grateful to be in the education community right now.
I really appreciate that, Nick. And you know, what's so fascinating about you is you have such a joie de vivre. Like, you really enjoy and you really take this opportunity, despite the fact that it's very challenging for quite a number of educators across the world to go through this experience, but really outlining it through an optimistic lens. And I think it's really helpful. You know, with that, I want to segue a little bit into talking to you a little bit about at the county level. What have you seen? If you see some pain points, like what have been central to some of those pain points? What are they? What is that like? I mean, what are the challenges and brief challenges that you guys are confronted with?
Yeah. I think you and Merv and I were talking before this call got started. One thing that we're hearing over and over again is that even if families have devices, which isn't a given, even if they have internet access, the way that we've structured our homes and our home lives haven't really been designed for 2 working parents to be on a video call simultaneously with 2 or 3 kids, also streaming video at the same time. And so one thing that everybody's kind of dealing with, sorry, my dog is, this is the work from home joy, my dog is saying hello to the mailman. One thing that I know that districts across the county are really working hard on is making sure that people have access to technology that they need in order to engage in distance learning, which is a challenge. And it's more complicated than maybe it seems. Like, most laptops are typically held in carts, which have all the AC wires tangled up in the back. And so it isn't as easy as just like handing them out. There's man-hour labor that goes into that. So they're dealing with that. And then working to get people hotspots that need hotspots, that's a challenge. And then the biggest one, I think, for everybody is this switch that had to happen kind of ad hoc.
Yeah.
In training parents how to set up a learning environment, and then how to take this big, massive, all the amazing, wonderful stuff on the internet and somehow curate that down into something that's digestible for the end users, which is
absolutely,
man, a really big challenge right now.
Yeah. And so you're seeing that at the county level as a pain point, like recognizing all these, I want to sort of term like this triage education or triage sort of initiative happening on that. So is the county level, when as this was unrolling, is the county level's approach to addressing it, what was not only the approach, but how did you actually sort of address those challenges? How do you sort of meet them? And we'll get into specifics in a second, but holistic.
Yeah. So the way that we really view our work is to support the educational goals and LCAPs of the districts that are part of our county. We've been we've been working really closely to foster some collaboration across district lines, so that people aren't necessarily working in silos in the dark, but rather are at least aware of what each other are doing. And then at the county level, one of the resources that I shared with you, really similar to Wide Open Schools that you guys have created. We've curated content, resources, schedules made specifically for parents who are doing distance learning from home to begin to support them in the journey that they're undergoing and will be undergoing for the foreseeable future.
I love it.
Yeah.
And let's get into that, because I don't want to like get a high level at this point, but I want to get into specifics, right? So if we can think about 2 or 3 solid things that the county, in this case Contra Costa, did to implement sort of the support or even advice. We'll get into advice in a second, but if there's something that you can share, like this has been our response, like, and this is sort of the way that, if you can sort of run me through the process by which those decisions and also those initiatives or those resources were had, especially for folks that maybe don't have that infrastructure. I'd love to kind of see and pick your brain a little bit. You're always really methodical about sort of how.
Yeah, well, and okay, so that's a really, just like at the most basic level, I think everybody in education, especially at like the LEA, at the county level, at the site administration level, our base nature is to want to help and support, right? Like that's why we got into education, was to help and support. And so the thing that's been really challenging that we've been really trying to force ourselves to do is take a step back and slow down, even when it's like really challenging against our like our what our heart tells us to do, because information's coming from so many different places so directly. So the first thing that we've done, and it's been hard, but I think it's been really powerful, is slowing down a little bit to make sure that anything that we put out has eyes on it, not just necessarily from our department, but from the agency as a whole, to make sure that the things that we're recommending aren't flying in the face of something that somebody else might be recommending, or recreating a wheel so that the end user now has 2 competing things that they kind of have to choose between. And that becomes really challenging. Because in a moment of dire situation like this, what we want to do is start pumping out content, right? And so long story short, like the first question that we've been asking ourselves is, how do we keep things like meaningful but yet manageable for the end user? Like we don't want to add to the content load that people are drowning in right now, and we want to be productive and we want to be helpful. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say that we've been really making a honest effort, like a really truly honest effort to do, is being closer contact with our end users than we were even when we were in person, which is an oxymoron, and it kind of boggles my mind, but it's been really true that we've been making an effort, instead of necessarily emailing always, to like pick up the phone and have conversations with the people that we're serving, so that we know that we're getting it right on the first time and not putting ourselves in a position where we have to walk stuff back.
Absolutely.
So I mean, like even like scheduling a short video call, doing something to like make sure that our relationships are strengthening and not faltering, has been like super key to everything that we've done so far.
I love that tip, and that, and it really reinforces this need for both educators and our communities to actually feel more connected with one another, right? Not only just thinking about the content and delivery or pedagogical approaches to the work, but rather how that person not only feels, but how they're actually feeling about what they're actually delivering. So, do you have any specific tools that you use to do that? I mean, is there any sort of mental checkbox that you and your team do to ensure that that's happening?
That's a good question too. So I think the thing that has been the litmus test for me personally has been to always, no matter what the situation, to lead with empathy and appreciation for the people who are like in the trenches doing the teaching work, whether that be teachers planning lessons, parents teaching those lessons and creating like learning environments, or administrators who are trying to like create some level of like equity and semblance across classrooms. So when I say empathy and appreciation, again, one of the challenging things that I've been wrestling with a little bit is, this is, as much as we like to strive for business as normal, this is not business as normal right now.
Yeah.
And we can say these are best practices for right now, but it's really hard to say this is a best practice because we've never been in this situation before. So another thing that we've been kind of leaning on is this idea of, this is our best guess for this moment of what's going to work, as opposed to pretending that we have expertise in terms of this huge, radical, unexpected shift that we were unprepared for in the end. So it's like, how do we put ourselves in the shoes of the end user? How do we have appreciation for the ridiculous amount of effort that is being put in to continue learning in the face of a global pandemic? And then, like, how do we slow down and make sure that we're not contributing to the deluge, if that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
I love it, Nick. I absolutely love that. I love it as much as I love the background images of your backdrop there.
I put these up just for you. I had just a basic white wall before this, and
I love it.
Right before I was just tacking stuff up just for you, Jamie.
You're amazing. That inspires empathy, and I really like the imagery that you have there. Let's get into specifics for educators or folks that are on. I'd love to really get into what directly can the county, what can educators or school district administrators turn to the county for? If you want to just close off with maybe 2 or 3 specific either resources or ways that both educators and administrators, and even community members, right, parents, can turn to their local county offices for additional support during this time.
Good question. So especially for districts, especially for local educational agencies, I would say that county offices can function really well if we think of like a bicycle rim. We have our bicycle rim, and then we have our hub in the middle of the wheel, and the hub connects all the spokes on the rim. Districts right now are all in a panic mode. And they're all trying to figure out, how are we going to make this work, and how are we going to get technology to students, and how are we going to send out the contracts and communicate what's expected. And there's like so much happening right now, sometimes invisibly, that we don't realize is even happening. What I would say, where counties are really often, and different counties operate differently, so I'm not speaking for all counties, but what I would say counties can often do for districts is act as that hub to connect district leadership, to make sure that everybody's aware of what's happening in neighboring districts, to kind of get like best thinking around what's working and what challenges exist. And when challenges are identified, county offices can be really great bouncing boards for brainstorming solutions, especially brainstorming solutions from like a outside perspective that isn't entrenched in the nitty-gritty of how things operate right now or have operated in the past.
Yeah, you've always been an amazing thinking partner at the local level, for sure. I've really appreciated that, but I do really appreciate that that invitation for others to really extend themselves to county offices on that. Let me ask you one last question, and feel free to expand on the original, or one of the questions I was asking. But given sort of the state of education, I want you to sort of wave your magic wand, and I want you to think about what educators should be anticipating for the fall, given your perspective, what they should be preparing for now for maybe the fall. And again, we don't know, given sort of the pandemic and this emergency, but if you were to kind of guess about planning ahead. So question 1 is, what do you think educators should be looking to? And two is how do you think county offices can respond to what those particular needs are? So.
Great question. All right. So can I start with, I'm going to start with the second question first, but then don't let me off the hook. Make sure I come back to the first one.
Won't let you off the hook for sure.
All right. So here's what I did an experiment recently in terms of what can district offices and county offices do. I did this experiment. Ed tech trainings are always hard because we always have, and when I say ed tech trainings, like I'm thinking all the things required now for distance learning, right? There's a natural, like, this is not a judgment, there's a natural range of confidence levels when it comes to technology and teaching with educational technology, right? And so there's always this constant like challenge of how do we make ed tech trainings or distance learning trainings relevant and well-paced for everybody in a training, right? So I just did an experiment, and this is only like compounded by the fact that we're not in the same room anymore, and we're not maybe even using all the same types of devices anymore. Things get really, really complicated. So I did this making video for classrooms to help classroom teachers introduce their lessons. It was a training, and I was really struck with this idea of like, how are we going to differentiate this for everybody in the room and then also meet the needs for their individual devices? I was pulling my hair out. What I ended up doing was kind of making a hyperdoc. I pre-recorded a whole bunch of videos. I gave them a task. And the task was to make a video just like they would for their classes and to email it to me just like they would for this specific group's classes. So they had a specific task, they had the pre-recorded videos, and instead of saying, hey, everybody, watch me click here, and then I'm going to do it again on an Android phone, and then I'm going to do it again on a Mac, I introduced the activity and I said, go for it. And then without telling them, I started a timer to see how long was it going to take each different person to complete the task and email it. Something amazing happened. In the first, let's see here, in the first like 30 minutes, no help whatsoever, 50% of the people in the room completed it. They sent it back to me. They used the little videos. They completed the task. Another 25% of it were able to do it in 50 minutes and about twice as long with a little bit of support. And then the last 25% of people required an hour and a half of support, like intense one-on-one, us walking through doing technical assistance type training, like where's everything going? It took them an hour and a half to complete it, and they completed it successfully, and they got the support they needed. The light that kind of went off in my head, the thing that got me thinking is, how often as an end user have we been one of the people in the front pack that's been sitting in a training that's took an hour and a half, and we've been twiddling our thumbs? And then also, how often have we been in the back of the pack, unafraid or afraid to ask a question because we don't want to slow down this side of the graph? And so I replicated it with another group, and I had the exact same experience.
Wow.
So what I would say for districts and county offices, when you're planning trainings around EdTech, anything that you can do to make it task-based and self-paced, as opposed to making everybody sit down and watch you do the same thing, your end users, in my experience, will be happier, they'll be more engaged, and they'll be more productive, especially for those people who finish early. They can get to planning the lessons that they need to plan, and the people who need that support can actually get that support. So there's my
Nick, I love that response. I would love for you to be my teacher at some point. That is amazing. The fact that you just highlight differentiation, but at a training level, I think is key and super helpful for that. I won't let you off the hook. So in the last minute or so that we had before we answer questions, I'd love to get your perspective on what should we be looking forward to for the fall? What should we be sort of—
Good question. All right. We don't know what's happening in the fall, and uncertainty is really, really challenging right now. For us, for teachers, for students, for families, the uncertainty is really challenging. What I'm trying to do right now is train myself to try to be as flexible as possible and to use this as an opportunity to learn as much as I can, so that if I need to use these skills beyond the end of the school year, they are in my pocket so that I can start the year leveraging them. In my mind, it's never going to be harder than what we are going through right now, because this was unexpected, we were unprepared, and it was really scary, right? The way that I'm trying to frame it in my mind is, if we have the unfortunate situation where we need to continue some form of distance learning in the future, we'll at least be prepared. We'll have the summer to prepare, mentally and with our skills, and we'll have the skills that we developed this year to lean upon. So I would just say flexibility and patience and having a good smile on our faces will do everything for the fall.
You're amazing, Nick. I appreciate that. And so let me take some questions now from folks, as well as maybe just pause for maybe a few seconds with you as you sort of started our conversation with, which is we all just need to take a breath and take in what we're experiencing at this time. So let's move to some questions. And Nick, thank you very much just kind of for your initial insights on it.
Yeah, for
Martin
sure.
Neiman, I really appreciate the question you asked. This pandemic seems to be highlighting the inequities in districts, regions, and communities. These inequities are on so many levels, including tech, social, emotional learning, and curriculum access, and alignment to state standards. Is there any discussion about how we can come out of this with more equity for our students and families across the state?
It's a really good question. It's a really challenging question.
Yeah, Mark, way to up the ante with that question. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Personally, so my role is an ed tech coordinator, and we have equity is always, we try to make equity the front part of our conversations. What I will say is I've seen a shift in the prioritization of ensuring that people have access to things like hotspots, that they have access to things like laptops if they don't. And I can't read the tea leaves, but what I hope is that this is put a new level of priority and acknowledgement around inequity. And personally, I'm gonna do everything I can to continue that level of conversation around it, to make sure that people have access to what they need, whether that be device wise or instructional practice or support wise. I just think it's really important, really powerful, and a really challenging problem that I think most districts are working really hard to meet head on.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't answer in a few minutes on that, but I do think just our own personal responsibility and our own personal sort of advocacy and the fact that it's being brought up to the forefront, I think, is a great start. So, Nick, what can I say? I wish I could give you a virtual hug. I really appreciate your presence. Thank you for everything. And all amazing attendees, thank you all very much for joining another session at our Common Sense Distance Learning. So to that, I wish you all a beautiful weekend and happy start to Ramadan. Happy start to your beautiful blessing. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you again, Nick. Appreciate your presence. See you soon.